Story 1. We were only allowed ginger ale if we were sick or on an airplane. It wasn't common, but we would occasionally get soda. Ginger ale was special, I guess. I was well into my 20s and had an epiphany one day that I'm a grown adult with my own money. I can just go buy a ginger ale if I want to. Story 2. Do not feed friends. If friends came over after school, we were not allowed to offer them snacks or drinks. My parents did not want them to eat all our food. As an adult, I feed everyone. I offered food to my kids' friends. I find it so weird that my parents were so stingy. We were not broke growing up. We were well off. I never minded feeding the kids who came over. Story 3. I slept over at a friend's house once in elementary school, and during dinner, no one was allowed to drink anything. The mom's reasoning was that by filling your stomach with water, you would be too full and not finish your meal. After everyone cleaned their plate, which was required by the parents to not waste anything, everyone got up and went to the refrigerator to get a can of Coca-Cola. I asked for a glass to get some water and was given a rolled-eye look from her mother. Story 4. When I was a kid, the rule in the car was that the driver picks the music. When I turned 16 and started driving, it became owner of the car picks the music. When I got my own car, it became most experienced driver in the car picks the music. Basically, my mom just changed the rules at random so that nobody could listen to music except her. Story 5. Every Thursday evening was fancy dinner, at which there were many more rules than dinner the rest of the week. The rest of the week, the rules were just don't be messy and don't be rude. But fancy dinner meant dress nicely, no swearing, sit up straight, only talk about polite subjects, and elbows off the table. I was confused why we mostly had casual dinners, but my parents insisted on fancy dinners even when we didn't have company. Now as an adult, I know what they were doing. They wanted us to have upward class mobility. They were making us practice our manners so we could make a good impression on fancy people when needed. I was grateful for it when I sat down for an academic awards dinner with some of my college professors and was able to talk easily and feel good because I recognized a fancy dinner when I saw one, and like a sleeper agent who just heard my code word, I knew exactly what to do. Story 6. You can't eat unless an adult made the food and gave you permission to eat it. Didn't get that permission often as there wasn't a present or conscious adult around to ask most of the time. I mainly ate at school. We also had plenty of food at home, so it wasn't as though we were impoverished and starving. I remember one time my mom snuck up behind me and shattered a decorative bowl over my head because she caught me, half-starved, eating shredded cheese out of the bag in the middle of the night. I was 13 at the time and had just hit a growth spurt. The first time I was at a friend's house and saw him just make a box of mac and cheese for us. I was panicking because he hadn't asked for or received permission to eat. He was confused, to say the least. Story 7. We were not allowed to lie on the bed and just read or be on the phone. Every time we did, my father would come screaming and mocking us for being lazy or something else. When I was a teenager, I always listened for his footsteps in the hallway so I could get up quickly and pretend to do something. Story 8. When the doorbell rings, the kids hide. My friend and her mother grew up thinking that was just a fun game. Then her mother found out that it was because her grandparents were hiding the kids that hadn't been taken to a mission school. Her grandparents told their kids that it was a game so that they wouldn't be scared. Story 9. My dad used to come into our rooms after bedtime, and if he saw that we were awake, he would yell, "Roll over, face the wall, and go to sleep." I always wondered why facing the wall was required. I realized as an adult that if we were facing the wall, we would not see the strangers coming in and out of our house at all hours of the night. Story 10. You can only eat certain things at certain times, like chips only on Fridays after 8 or only fries on Saturday, only pizza for birthdays and cookie time at 3. I followed these rules until my mid-20s. I figured out that I'm an adult now, so I can eat whatever and whenever I want. It felt really wrong to just grab some chips on other days for a long time. Story 11. My grandma told me not to eat what they serve at birthday parties because it's rude to eat their food, and also, you don't know what they put in it. Update. I asked my uncle why my grandma was like this, and his response was, she told us this because people would do witchcraft to the food to get someone sick on purpose and curse them. Story 12. My mom used to close the kitchen at 6 for me, but everyone else in the family could use it freely whenever they wanted. My brother was allowed to have snacks that I wasn't, so he could keep them in his bedroom. I wasn't allowed to eat in any room but the kitchen. Story 13. No locked doors, ever. In fairness, it started as a safety thing when we were kids. When I was a toddler, I fell asleep behind a locked door, and my parents thought I was dead because I wasn't responding. But when it carried into adulthood, it became about not letting us have boundaries or our own space. My mother assumed we were keeping horrible secrets or plotting against her if we locked a door. Heaven forbid if we just wanted an ounce of privacy. Story 14. My mom had a strict rule about me not being allowed to eat at anyone's house. She was convinced that if I accepted an invitation for dinner, it would make it look like she couldn't afford to feed me. It just became my normal to say no if someone invited me to dinner. That was until I met the man who would be my ex-husband. His family kept inviting me over to dinner so that they could get to know me. I kept saying no. They thought I was rude. I finally explained why. That was when I realized that it wasn't normal. Story 15. When I stay at my grandparents', my grandfather will not go to sleep until he knows that everybody in the house is asleep. One time I woke up to use the bathroom. Keep in mind it's 3 or 4 in the morning. As I'm walking out, he comes out of nowhere and goes, "What are you doing awake?" He got pretty mad. I never understood this, but I won't ask him why. Story 16. If there are 4 of you living in the house and a box of cakes, sweets, yogurts, or whatever comes in a number divisible by that number, you stop eating when you reach that share. If there are additional or an unequal number, you leave the extras for whoever enjoys that particular thing the most. But if you suddenly crave it, no one gets mad. It's first come, first served, with preference for global enjoyment over personal. About 12 years ago, I moved in with my partner and their 10-year-old daughter. I am a save it for when I most want it kind of person. They are both eat it as soon as it's available kind of people. They had never heard of this. What I thought of as an unwritten and unbreakable rule was totally alien to them. The number of times I have bought a pack of something, gone to eat it a few days later only to find that all of them, including mine, had already been eaten. After a while, they accustomed themselves to my expectations. Sometimes they would forget how many they had already had, which is understandable. I realize not everyone was raised like me, but sometimes they would get so frustrated that I would leave the chocolate bar or whatever there for days, weeks without eating it. I remember during her teenage years, the daughter would sometimes march into my room with the chocolate and demand I eat it because she was sick of looking at it. Often my partner will eat the thing I have been saving, then replace it sometimes 2 to 3 times before I get around to eating it. Luckily, we are all, well, teenage hormones aside, very patient, respectful, and understanding people, so there's never any bad blood or ill feelings. All frustrations are usually vented through humor. Story 17. Not being able to eat or make anything in the kitchen after dinner. After dinner was finished and the kitchen was cleaned, it was essentially closed. When I was younger, I had some friends over for a sleepover, and they wanted to get a snack. I told them the kitchen was closed, so we just had to wait until morning. They all looked at me like I was insane. They convinced me to sneak a bag of chips, and I was panicking the entire time. Story 18. We were not allowed to walk around the house barefoot or in socks because my whole family thought that was basically inviting the flu and common cold into you. If we were ever walking around the house without shoes or house slippers on, we got yelled at. It was a huge cultural shock when I started meeting people in college who took their shoes off at the door. Story 19. Mom was foreign and carried strange habits with her to America. Her catchphrase that I heard a million times? No need. Can I get fries with my burger? No need. Can we go to the movies? No need. Can I get sprinkles on my ice cream cone? No need. Anything that required spending any money was a no need. If you had to pay for oxygen to live, Mom would probably still say, no need. Story 20. Not me, but my ex. Not allowed to eat hot dogs unless it is accompanied by a glass of orange juice, because of a belief that things in the orange juice canceled out harmful nutritional things in the hot dogs. Story 21. No glass drinking glasses. Don't get me wrong, we had a bunch, but we weren't allowed to use them, any of us except my dad. He told me that one of us would drop one and wouldn't clean it up, then he'd cut his foot and die. Is that what we wanted? At 24, I came home from another state and asked if the rules still existed. He said yes, so I took all the glasses back to North Carolina with me. Now, all that said, I'm 33 and he's passed on. I was helping my mom out recently, and she dropped a glass and didn't clean it up well, so maybe he had a point about our family in particular. Story 22. My parents always shouted at each other, and their conversations were often filled with tension. When I was in college, I had a sleepover at my best friend's house. Everything felt so peaceful, especially when we were eating together. It was then that I realized my family is unpleasant, and I had never experienced a truly peaceful environment with them. Story 23. The living room was for decorative purposes, not use. The dining table, the couch, the television, the carpet, and the indoor mat were all off limits. My mom was really obsessed with those home magazines and the reality shows of rich, lifeless people who always seemingly had a spotless home. Also, the hand towels in the kitchen and bathroom were not for use. Additionally, if you could avoid walking on the carpet, that would be best, but the house was mainly carpeted. And honestly, if you could just not talk, think, or breathe, you were good. But no, Christmas toys weren't to be all opened. She allowed only a select few. The rest went into storage for collections. I don't know where any of them are, to be honest. Never saw them again. The girls, including me, had to clean, cook, and take care of everything, including cleaning up and serving my brother's food while they gamed. I could probably keep going, but yeah, just normal stuff. Story 24. Reading these rules makes me feel like I was in the most normal house. We didn't have any rules beyond don't touch what's not yours, referring to the sibling stuff mainly, without asking and being respectful. That's pretty much it. We could eat whatever. We could eat at the TV or at the table as long as you tidied up after yourself. We had a no shoes in the house rule, but if you forgot something inside and ran back in with your shoes, my parents wouldn't have flipped out. I feel like so many of these rules lead to dysfunctional behavior as an adult. I don't have many rules for my kids except to talk respectfully and keep a tidy house or room. Story 25. Kids had to stay outside unless they were doing homework. My youngest brother was 5 and he got to stay inside, but the rest of us 8, 9, 12, 14, and 16 had to be outside. This was in the 90s. Story 26. No red nail polish, only whores wore red nail polish, according to my pedophile stepdad. I, as an adult, wear my slutty red nail polish every time I get my nails done. Story 27. The bed had to be made perfectly every morning before you left for school. Sheets with properly tucked corners. Comforter folded correctly over the pillows. When I was in middle school, a friend suggested that just pulling the blanket over the pillows was sufficient because technically the bed was made. I got grounded for a week for knowing better and not doing it the right way. I could only have approved friends inside the house. It turns out not everyone leaves unsecured firearms where children can access them, and it was easier just to let me have only one friend. Assume that any weapon is loaded because they were. Not everyone keeps a rifle next to the laundry hamper in the hallway. When I was young, nap time in my room with the door shut. Until I left home, in bed promptly at bedtime. In neither case did they care whether I slept as long as I was quiet and stayed in bed. I learned to read to myself at age 3 and would often stay up half the night reading. Therapy has been great, thanks. Story 28. Bedroom window had to be open at all times, even in the winter. I thought it needed to be open to get air. We would suffocate if it wasn't open. Seemed totally logical. Story 29. A blanket was hung between the top of the stairs and the hallway to block light. We never turned on the hallway lights since my mom was always sleeping. I imagine bringing friends up to your room. Story 30. No turning the lights on before 6 p.m. Eat everything on your plate whether you like it or not. No bare feet allowed in the kitchen. Ask first before grabbing anything from the kitchen, including water. For every minute you're late after curfew, that's how many days you're grounded. 2 minutes equals 2 days, and so on. No one can turn on any water taps or flush any toilets while the shower is running. No getting muddy or dirty when playing outside, even accidentally. Even in the spring when it's all muddy. I'm a parent now and am healing my inner child by being the parent to my kids that I never had. Story 31. Being alone. It was amazing except for a few times. I woke myself up for elementary school and put myself to sleep, which, to be fair, was around 2 a.m. because my parents came back after that, which is why they couldn't wake me up. Honestly, I loved it. The times my mom stayed home being sick are the worst moments of my childhood. Being locked outside in the snow, having to go to the shed and use boxes and bags to stay warm, or being locked in the collapsing, unfinished basement without any lights. Being alone was the best.